Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to be taking a look at one of these PV5150 heads. This was brought in because the customer said the amp got thirsty on stage when somebody else was using it. So I guess they had sat a beer on top of here or something like that, and a lot of it went inside the amp. Hopefully nothing major is shorted out, and maybe it's just a fuse or something like that, but we're still going to take the whole thing out and just make sure that everything else is good. So you never really just want to blindly change a fuse, especially when something like that happens. Well, that's never good. You can definitely see where water got in down here. You can see where it's been wet all across, like all by that power transformer. Yikes! Go ahead and pull that fuse out. Let's go ahead and check this fuse. Alright, mains fuse is good. Nothing obvious here. Alright, I see this one's had the bias mod done to it. I think I must have worked behind the same tech in town more than once because they like to install this type of trim pot here. Seems pretty secure. Going through the rest of the amp, nothing looks off. None of the tubes look cracked or anything. All the simple things first. So let's go ahead and check these tubes. Liquid could have damaged the tube and caused it to short out. So let's put all these on the tester and see what we've got. Alright, these tubes have been warming up for a few moments. Warm enough to get started, so let's go ahead and throw some voltage on here. And there we go, we got dead tubes. So these two are just trash. The plate current right here, it has a handy diagram right on the tester that says that current range should be falling between 12 and 40. It's 5.5 on that tube. 3.5 volts on that one. Those are pretty much dead. Might as well be dead. Transconductance is their ability to amplify sound. It should be at least 2.2, greater than 2.2. I mean, this isn't even 1. Not even 1. So it's likely one shorted out, probably took the other one with it. So these were probably on the same half. Well, let's put in a new set of tubes and see what happens. Here's one of the tubes that came out of the amp that was still good. I went ahead and took the liberty of labeling this one. I've actually went through my stash and I found one that's almost identical. This one was a 14.5 milliamps. This one's 14.6, 2.34 GM, 2.40 GM for the transconductance. These are really close. This was the other one that was still good, 16.5 milliamps, 2.51, and I've got one here, 17.1, 2.51 GM. So these are pretty close. I go through pretty much all of my old tubes that are still good, and I label everything just so I can, just for situations like this, really. We could get a new set of tubes, but why not just squeak a little bit more life out of what's left here, because who knows, they could probably last quite a while. So what I'll do is I'm going to put the two higher rated ones on the outside. You know what? We should zap these sockets with the oxide too. Well, a note on the bias mod on these things. So it's not always a good idea, and typically wise, because people will think that they need to bias super hot to get like a great tone and everything. I mean, the tone that people were getting out of these before the bias mod even became a thing was pretty good. I mean, that's the way Eddie was using them. Most of the tone in these amps, I mean, it comes from the preamp. You know, the power amp is a good design and everything, but all the distortion and saturation you want, it's already there. They tend to bias the power section a little cold, which may or may not be great, but you know that's really subjective. I think they'll probably sound fine biased a little cold, but either way, we're going to take our readings, we're going to see where these are already at, and we're actually going to bias it a little cold, probably within about 60%, maybe even 55% of max idle current. Just because I want to get more life out of these tubes, I want to get more life out of this amp, and there's no real need to run it that hot. You know, if that's what you want, great, but I the price of tubes nowadays, why spend the extra money if you don't have to? So it's been warming up. Let's go ahead and take it off standby. Let's take some of these volumes, make sure everything is low. And actually it is biased a lot lower than I thought. We're at 18.5 milliamps, 21 milliamps. That's crazy low. Let's see what our plate voltage is. $4.99, man, so we're right there at 500. Yep. So if you have a 6L6 GC that's dissipating at 30 watts, I would have expected to see something more like 42 milliamps on this. Even 36 would be conservative. I mean, these are biased incredibly low. 30 is an incredibly conservative number, and we're not even at that. This one's at 35 milliamps. This one's hovering just below 32 at 31.86. I'm just going to leave this on for a minute and go grab a guitar and plug it in and just make sure it sounds right. But I think that's really going to be fine. We'll play through it for a minute and just make sure that these don't drift anywhere, but that's probably going to be alright. Alright, so it's been on for a while. It's hovering just below 36 milliamps on this one, so it's gone up just a tad. This one's now sitting at 33. I mean, I do have the controls up a little bit, but that's fine right there. It's going to be okay. Sounds fine to me. One last thing before I box this up. I do want to point out that it is important when you do bias an amp to jam on it for a while and actually play it at some good volume, because things that show in the tester, they're going to be different when it goes in the amp. Trust me. So now that I've been jamming on it for a while, that side that was a few milliamps lower than the other, it's not now. They're both actually about the same. This one's actually reading a little bit higher than it was before. So now they're both idling at about 36 milliamps. What I'm going to do is, since I've got them still hooked up and the amp's been jammed on for at least 20-30 minutes here, I'm just going to go ahead and dial that back down. We'd still be safe there. I mean, they could go up to 42 milliamps and they're still going to be within 70% of their rating. Like I said, I want to stick by that 60% number. 34.7, 35, that's fine. That's where it should sit when the amp warms up. And if it does happen to go up even a little bit more after that, it's still going to be a conservative number. The amp sounds fine. You'll get more life out of the tubes. You'll get more life out of the amp. So really no harm done. So if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.